Well, hey there, friends. Welcome to another exciting edition of Equipped with Chris Brooks. This is going to be an interactive edition. I'm so glad that you've joined us. Do me a favor, strap on your seatbelt. We're going to navigate through the contours of culture, as always, with the lens of the biblical worldview on. But before we do that, let me remind you, this is the day that the Lord has made. He has given it as a gift so that you and I can rejoice and be glad in it. So let's do just that. Let's follow the words of the Apostle Paul. Let's rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. There's a lot that's happening in our country and our world. There's no shortage of news headlines. So much of it is lamentable. Much of it we just don't get the opportunity because we're so inundated by volume of news stories to process deeply. But occasionally there's something of such massive significance that it demands that we take time to process deeply. Such is the case of a recent bill that was signed into law that affects the unborn, that affects children, and now even children who are born. It's a matter of life and death. It's a matter of human rights. And I want to talk about that. I do want to frame, though, the conversation by saying I do recognize that what happens in one state often is ignored by the other 49 states. After all, it seems to be maybe very localized. It's not pertaining to us, so why should I pay attention? But when what happens in one state represents a broader trend that is building momentum, it cannot be ignored. Sometimes something happens in one state and it sets a precedent that other states will grab a hold of and will use it as a framework and a model to replicate. And again, such is the case of our subject today. It has to do with the protection of the human life while in the womb and at the point of birth. The protection of children, we've often talked about, is one of the measures of a moral society. I think we would all agree with that a society that doesn't protect its children from abuse, its most vulnerable people from abuse, is one that cannot be deemed as moral. Also, when laws hurt women and laws hurt families, they should capture our attention. Well, such is the case of what has happened recently in the state of Massachusetts. As the most recent example of a bill that removes any limitation on how late an abortion can be performed, and as well as what thresholds need to be achieved in order for an abortion to be permissible. I'll read simply from the Christian Post. They wrote an article on this. Ryan Foley wrote an article on this on Tuesday of this week. Massachusetts has passed a bill lifting the state's 24-week gestational limitation on abortion. So that's to imply that prior to this recent bill being signed into law, there was a limitation that abortions in that state couldn't happen beyond 24 weeks. Now, some of you would say, full stop, that isn't even acceptable. But as you read further, you realize how far Massachusetts has gone. Pro-life advocates, I will say, has said that this law that was signed into this bill, that was signed into law by the governor earlier this week, effectively allows abortion throughout all 9 months of pregnancy. Democratic Governor Maura Healey signed House Bill 5595, and I would encourage you to read it. House Bill 5595 into law on Monday. The bill passed the Massachusetts House in a 119-35 vote last month. No Republicans supported it, and it should be noted that this was not just a partisan dissent, but 10 Democrats also joined Republicans in voting no. This bill was a measure to remove language. The language that the bill seeks to remove was language that was previously there that required doctors performing late-term abortions to determine the procedure was necessary to protect the mother's life or health. because the unborn child had a fetal anomaly or because the child could not survive outside the womb without major medical help. So, again, prior to this, there were standards in place. And I do have the law in front of me. And the law in front of me says that physicians who were seeking to perform late-term abortions had to prove that it was necessary to preserve the life of the patient. In those matters where it could be deemed necessary to preserve the life of the patient, presenting grave health risk, late-term abortion in Massachusetts was permissible. But now that has been removed. There is no threshold anymore. There is not the requirement that a physician prove that this was warranted because of a lethal fetal anomaly or diagnosis. There is no threshold that this abortion was warranted because of a grave fetal diagnosis that indicated the fetus is incapable of sustaining life outside of the uterus without extraordinary medical intervention. All that language was removed. You have to ask, why would any state want to remove such language? It was replaced with a simple line. Here's the simple line. An abortion may be performed by a physician based upon the professional judgment of the physician. Now, for any of us who have dealt with the medical industry, we know that there is a variety of levels of skill sets and professional expertise that physicians bring to the table to solely deem it a physician's choice without any threshold to be met. I think put the unborn child, and now all the way up to birth, the born child in grave danger of simply being cast away because of inconvenience. And this is what the argument is of many pro-lifers, that this is an inconvenience law, that this is not just a law that's based off of matters of protecting women who are in health crises, because if that was the case, the language was already there to protect moms who are in health crises. This was a matter of removing any measure because of it being massively inconvenient. This is a trend, a growing trend. And my question to you today at 877-LIVE-675, that's 877-548-3675, how should Christians respond to this growing trend of making abortion legal all the way through the gestational period, all the way through the 9 months of pregnancy, even up through birth? This is an extreme place to be, but this is where we are in this country. And I know for many of you, you say, isn't this an old debate? Isn't this an old discussion? Well, it may be a discussion that is many decades long, but it is one that carries with it such gravity, such a level of importance that we cannot simply discard it, nor can we simply walk away, nor can we simply say we agree to disagree. Not in matters of life and death, not when the vulnerable are at risk. And so I think we have to ask ourselves a question, and that is, how do we respond to this? I love to hear from you, 877-548-3675. How should Christians respond to this growing trend? I said that this is a growing trend across states. Let me mention others. Now 10 in total, along with the District of Columbia, that allow abortions at any point. Alaska, if you're in Alaska, this is true for your state as well. Colorado, Maryland, my home state of Michigan, Minnesota, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Vermont, Washington. And the question becomes, and who's next? National Right to Life President Carol Tobias accused the state of having erased the final protection for unborn children who can feel pain and who could survive outside the womb. Again, one of the thresholds that had to be met previously with the language that was previously on the books is that it had to be proven that a fetus could not survive outside the womb. Now, you don't have to prove that. So I agree with Carol Tobias that there is no threshold anymore. At the very stage when premature babies are receiving life-saving care in neonatal intensive care units, Carol goes on to say, this state will now permit abortionists to end the life of children of the same age and even older. So you have this dichotomy of the fact that our health system is supposed to preserve life, promote life. And so while we have these neonatal intensive care units that are designed to care for children, we're now saying, well, it's also okay to just terminate them, to kill them, to dismember them at a time when they can feel pain and they should be most protected. The Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America organization also released a statement in which they said it should shock the conscience that tens of thousands of unborn Americans are barbarically dismembered limb by limb and torn apart every single year, she said. Sadly, the number will only increase with Governor Healey's approval of the abortion up until birth bill. Again, this is a sentiment that I don't think is unreasonable, illogical to assume. Charlotte Logier Institute, which is one that I've often talked about on this program, said without any minimal national standard, the approach of leaving it simply to the states to decide has proven to be harmful for the unborn child. We must do all we can to turn the page on America's ugly chapter of late-term abortions. I have to assume and believe that the heart of God is grieved, and I have to assume and believe that history will not look favorably upon any society that fails to protect its most vulnerable. And again, if your argument is women should have protections when their health is at risk, I would argue that that language was on the books. This was a move, a bill to remove that language, to say now, regardless of any threshold or standard, we don't want any limitations on when an abortion can take place. I want to know from you, those of you who are listening, how should Christians respond to this? I do want to say that I've always tried to create a respectful environment here, so you don't have to agree with me, but I don't have to agree either. We have the ability to be able to, as brothers and sisters in Christ, to disagree, but it is incumbent upon us to be able to prove our position from the Word of God. So I want to hear from you, 877-548-3675. I also reject the false dichotomy that this is a choice between loving women and loving children. I think it's incumbent upon us as Christians to love both women and children and families. I think it's important for us to wholeheartedly say we are pro-family, pro-life, pro-adoption, because this is the heart of God. He came to give life and that more abundantly. However, in America, it is proven to be the case that we are exchanging a right to life culture to a right to death culture. And any society that has made that trade-off ultimately does not have a long future to look forward to. I want to hear from you, 877-548-3675. We'll talk about how we as Christians can respond to this growing trend of removing any restrictions on abortion up until birth. I'll be right back with more of Equip right after this. Christians often feel the tension of living for Christ in a culture that seems to drift further from biblical truth every day. In his book, A Compelling Faith in a Compromising Culture, Pastor Mike Tatlock shows how to stand firm without fear, without compromise, and with a faith so compelling that people will ask where your hope comes from. Request your copy today when you donate to Equip. Simply call 888-644-4144 or visit equipradio.org. Welcome back to Equip with Chris Brooks. I appreciate many of you calling in. On this important matter, Massachusetts on Monday signed into law, the governor there, Maura Healey, Democrat Maura Healey, signed into law there a bill that removed any language that required thresholds for protection of the unborn in the womb and all the way up to birth concerning the right to life. Now abortion in that state, along with 10 others and a District of Columbia who have also followed the same pattern, can take place without reason, without rationality, without any threshold being met, simply deemed to be beneficial, as broad as that word can be applied. I want to hear from you on how Christians could respond, and I would just simply say that you should know up front, I think the response has to be multifaceted, not one-dimensional, and so I want to talk through what are the various ways. Let's compile a list, because I think we need to think about this thoroughly on every level. How can we as Christians respond? Maybe you have a thought or an idea on this. Maybe you are in public service as a politician and you've had to wade through this. I'd love to hear from you. Maybe you're a physician, OBGYN. I'd love to hear from you as well. Maybe you're just a concerned Christian. 877-548-3675. Let's go to Brenda, who's listening in Illinois. Hey, Brenda, thank you so much for listening on this important topic and being willing to weigh in. What's your comment, Brenda?
Hi, Pastor. Thank you for taking my call. I would like to say, as Christians, we need to be more attentive, before all these problems come up. Yeah, because, God always give us a way, what's going on before it happens.
Yes.
And so, a lot of times we get mad about the people in authority, but we miss the part where God tells us to pray for them, that they make wise decisions.
Yes.
And, and then we say, it's our fault. No, it's God give us, he said he gave us the keys to the kingdom. And so to unlock it, we got to seek him and knowing and that to pray for the women and the doctors, because you know what? They making money, but they really don't understand what they doing is wrong.
Yeah.
And so
let me respond to a few things that you just said so wisely, Brenda. First off, you are 100% right when you say that we need to be proactive and not just reactive. None of this should be a surprise to us. In many ways, there are many people who will hear this conversation today and say, why do you sound surprised? This is what has been going on. There's nothing new under the sun. And to that extent, I agree with you. I also agree with you that God knows the world that we live in is fallen, and he has given us marching orders. Those marching orders, by the way, are found in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 18, verse number 19 in particular. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Verse 20, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you, and behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. So clearly, God's response, if our response does not include the Great Commission, then I fear that we have lost sight of God's overall redemptive mission for humanity and what his proactive resolution of this is. His proactive resolution of this is that hearts need to be changed. And there's only one who can change the human heart. That's Jesus. And salvation is what people need. People make these types of decisions because they've been blinded to the truth of God's word. People make these decisions because they need Jesus. And so to say that we can resolve this apart from that, and I'm not going to say that the only thing that's needed is evangelism, but I will say that the foundational thing that's needed is the renewal of the heart and the mind through a relationship with Jesus Christ. And so, Brenda, I fully agree with you. The church needs to go about doing her job. That includes church planting in states where there is very low Christian influence. I recently was at a dinner with some missionaries who do work around the world. And one of the things that they do is they map out countries, and they say which countries are quote unquote unreached, unreached by the gospel, and let's plant churches there. And I think we could do the same with communities and states and neighborhoods in this country to be able to say as pastors, hey, which places are yet unreached? And let's make sure that we're sending pastors, churches, missionaries there. There was a time in America's history where that was the approach. And I think that needs to be approach again. I'll say one more thing. If ever there was a time where we needed church planting movements to focus in on university towns, it's right now. College and universities are what shapes minds and produces future leaders. And that's where gospel influence has to be seen the strongest. If we're going to win the soul of the next generation and the next, then we need to be in the places where their minds, hearts, and souls are being shaped. And so, Brenda, thank you for chiming in. I so appreciate your comments. 877-LIVE-675 is the number. 877-548-3675. Let's go to Tommy, who's listening in the great state of Alabama. Love our friends there. Tommy, thank you so much for listening. What's your comment, my friend?
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking my call. I served 2 consecutive terms in the Alabama legislature.
Thank you for that.
All I can tell Christians is this: if you want to be heard, you need to get out and vote. That's the bottom line. That's all they listen to is the vote. Otherwise, the lobby runs your state. I mean, you take in Massachusetts, there's no telling who lobbied for that. The Medical Association, all kind of healthcare lobbyists, and that's who they listen to.
Yeah.
And if Christians want to be heard and they want to stop this kind of legislation, they need to flog to the polls. I mean, just get to the polls and vote. That's the only way to stop it.
You know, first off, thank you for serving, Tommy, those 2 terms. I realize that in some ways those jobs are very intense, very hard. It requires deep sacrifice, more than what most people will know. I know that there are many times where you are heavily criticized and it can be a thankless job. On the other hand, God bless you for being a Christian in a very difficult mission field and representing Christ there. So with that being said, I am curious to know, Tommy, how was the church, let's just say in Alabama, in building bridges with elected officials? Was the church proactive in building not only accountability, but supportive pastoral relationships? Or was there a huge gulf between the church and the government?
Well, I really believe that there's a huge gap, even in Alabama. But in Alabama, you have to understand, in the South, there's a lot of faith. There's a lot of faith in Christ.
Yeah, and I bring this up, Tommy, to say I do think that Alabama becomes a pretty good litmus test because it is the Bible Belt, at least in part. And although that's changing in a lot of ways from how we would historically see the quote unquote Bible Belt, the reality is that there is a huge significant Christian influence. With that being said, if you would say being in Alabama as an elected official that there is a big gulf, man, how much more in a place like Massachusetts that is not in the Bible Belt, typically seen as pretty significantly unchurched. What I mean when I bring this up is that I agree with you. I think that voting is part and parcel with good citizenship. In particular, local voting. I think that so often we become so enamored on the national level that we forget our local communities. And anyone who's listened to me any length of time knows how important it is. And I say it often, we need to roll up our sleeves and be civically involved on local and state levels. With that being said, I think that building relational bridges is another part of this. So I'm proposing a threefold solution: spiritual, political, and relational. We need to lead with prayer and evangelism. We need to make sure we are voting for laws that lead to human flourishing and standing against those that discourage human flourishing. And then we need to build relational bridges with people strong enough to carry the weight of the gospel. If we are not standing on these three pillars, then we won't see these things change. And we need to do these things, as our good sister Brenda, who called earlier, said, proactively and not just in reaction. And oh, by the way, we need more people like Tommy who are willing to say, I will serve. Whatever sector of our culture and society that we refuse to get involved in, we are in essence turning it over to our enemy, the adversary, whether it's family or business or education or government, whatever area or sector of society the church does not have a gospel voice in, we're conceding to Satan. Want to hear from you? 877-LIVE-675 is the number. How should Christians respond to this latest news? We'll be right back. Welcome back to Equip with Chris Brooks. One of the most significant news stories of the week is what has taken place in the state of Massachusetts, where the governor there has signed into law Bill 5595, which removes any language that requires a threshold to be met in late-term abortions. It also removes a 24-week gestational limitation on abortion. Now abortions can happen all the way through birth. And if anything tells you that abortion is the murder of a child, it is the fact that the child can be fully born and their life be terminated. And this also removes any requirement that was previously there, such as the fact that you previously had to prove that the mother's life or health was at risk because the unborn child had a fetal anomaly, or because the child could not survive outside of the womb. Now you no longer have to prove that. So my question today has been, how should Christians respond? Lou has chimed in on Facebook, and I do want to let you know that Facebook is available to you. This is the question of the day. How should Christians respond? Lou in Wisconsin said, Alliance Family Services is a great ministry clinic for pregnant mothers to utilize. And it's all free. It's helpful for mothers and to avoid abortion. I want to say thank you for Lou chiming in with that, because it gives me the opportunity to celebrate the over 2,500 pregnancy resource centers across the country, and growing, by the way, the number of pregnancy resource centers that are available. These are alternative to abortion clinics. Many of them offer ultrasounds, not only care and support through the pregnancy, but many for years after the pregnancy. They offer counseling for expectant fathers, support for expectant mothers, and so much more. And I would encourage churches to support. I know that Family Life as well does a great job in getting ultrasound equipment and the needed and the necessary equipment to support moms into these clinics. And so to paint a picture that somehow the church has just been one-sided at this, oblivious to the need to support moms, is deceptive. As a pastor who helped to open a pregnancy resource center in the city of Detroit, and so proud of the work that my wife helped to head up in doing that, and the rest of our church family, I will tell you that what we were to the community was a place of not only helping through pregnancy, but through our baby and child support ministries. We were often doing life-giving work and providing food and supplies and diapers and clothing, and not only that, but counseling and a network of support for moms. So often the moms that we were dealing with didn't even have family support, but we became that for them, and that's what the church is meant to be. So I want to say thanks to Lou for chiming in and reminding us that we need to support the pro-life pregnancy resource centers. I also want to say a word about another organization that has been a frequent guest on equipped with me, and that is APLOG, the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists. There are over 5,000 pro-life OBGYNs that are a part of this organization, and each of them have done a great job of providing high levels of care for their patients while also recognizing they're responsible for two patients, the pregnant mom and the baby that is in the womb. And I'm grateful for all the pro-life OBGYNs. It's not easy being one. There's so much pressure. And so I want to bring attention to this organization that provides great professional guidance on how we can be both caring and pro-life. I want you to find out more at aplog.org, AAPLOG, aplog, AAPLOG.org. Let's go to the phone lines. Winona is listening in Tennessee. Hey, Winona, thank you for your patience. What's your comment?
Oh, this one hits home. It's emotional. Being a woman that couldn't have children, the subject hits me hard. It's so easy to be able to take the life, and yet so hard to be able to get a child.
Yeah.
And I love hearing what you just said, because there are resources. Probably not as easy as it is, to go and unfortunately do what people are doing, but it just breaks my heart. I just think that, as Christians, we need to pray.
Yeah.
We just really need to be aware of what's going on and understanding that it is the devil. This whole thing is it's overwhelming. Sometimes I feel like I want to help and I don't know how.
Yeah.
Because I have such a heart for children. And I just really appreciate that you're doing this on the radio today, because you're going to touch many lives.
Well, God bless you. And if you don't mind, I want to use your concern as an opportunity to talk practically about how we can help, because I don't think you're the only one, Winona, that feels overwhelmed. And at times, that can lead to a paralysis in many ways, to say, man, this is so overwhelming. I feel like a pebble in an ocean. What difference can I make? And I would say you can make much difference. Your voice matters. Even you calling in right now matters more than what you may realize. To be able to have women who express their heart here is important, because I think one of the false misrepresentations is that somehow this is an issue of men trying to oppress women or governments trying to oppress women. And I think it's important for pro-life women to be able to say, no, that's not the truth. What is true is that we have a responsibility and a duty to both mother and child. And the second thing that I want to say is that, this is an opportunity for us to say we're not only pro-life, but we're pro-adoption. We work with a great agency, one of the largest Christian adoption and foster agencies throughout the country, Lifeline Christian Services out of Alabama. And they do a great job in being proactive in caring for women who are vulnerable, and for encouraging foster care and adoption and respite care for foster and adoptive parents. So big shout out to them. Big shout out to CareNet as well, who is the largest network of pregnancy resource centers. So I would say, if you're looking for ways to make a difference, my good friend John Stonestreet often says, outrage is not a strategy. It's not enough to be outraged. Yes, we should be outraged, but we can't simply be angry. We have to be involved. And any involvement should start in our own local communities. You can't wait for presidential elections. They just simply don't happen as frequently as the need demands. You can't wait for the next Supreme Court justice to be up. You have to act in your local community in a way that has a daily impact. So find a foster care agency that you can serve and help with. If not becoming a foster parent yourself, then being able to support foster parents. being an advocate for them. Maybe consider adoption if you've not considered that before. One of the ways that God has written our family's love story in such a beautiful way. Of our 6 kids, 3 were adopted, 3 were biological, and we love them all equally, and it's a beautiful, beautiful gift of God. I would encourage you to serve or volunteer at a pregnancy resource center. These are practical ways that we can get involved. And some of you have the ability, the capacity, and the calling in Christ to demonstrate even greater leadership, starting a pregnancy resource center in a community where it did not exist. In Detroit, where I get a chance to live, serve, and do life, when my wife and her team and our church decided that we wanted to bring a pregnancy resource center to our neck of the woods, there was only one that was at the outskirts of our city, pretty far away. And the reality was that we needed more for a city of our size, almost 1 million people. And so you don't wait. You demonstrate leadership. And that leadership may be serving in civic government. That leadership may be in your local church, helping pastors to get pro-life language and programs going. But there's much we can do. And I'm grateful for Winona, how this has touched your heart. And I trust that by God's grace, he's going to use you in mighty ways to make a difference in the life of many. Let's go to Allison in Chicago. Allison, thank you so much for listening, for your patience. It's important. I appreciate you. What's your comment?
Hi. I guess I wanted to say that Christian women, well, and men actually, could respond by giving their testimony if they have experienced the trauma of living through abortion. If you've created a child and then the woman had an abortion like I did, I had 2 abortions when I was a teenager, and I'm 53 now, and I am still dealing with the ramifications of that trauma. I know that the Lord loves me. I've been forgiven and set free, but the fathers of those babies, one in particular, he doesn't know the Lord yet. Wow. And he hasn't come forward with his story. And so I just think that if people were willing to give their testimony, Christians, about the damage that it causes, because it's murder at any point of life.
First off, I want to applaud your courage, Allison, in giving us a call. I have said many times, and I'll say it again, that the voices of post-abortive moms and dads are the most powerful voices in this discussion, because you don't talk from a place of theory. You don't talk from a place of speculation. You have lived it. You know that in spite of the many years that have passed, that you're still impacted. You're still affected. You know the lies that often lead to the deception that encourages a mom to abort a child, thinking that it's just a bunch of tissues and cells and you won't have to worry about this and it'll simply lead to happier lives. And I even appreciate you recognizing the impact that it has on the fathers who are robbed of the ability to know their children and to raise them to love and fear the Lord. With that being said, there are so many avenues through which women like yourself who are brave, courageous, who have been repentant and forgiven and redeemed in Christ can leverage their voice. And I would say it starts with the local church. Local churches need to give platform and opportunity for the Allisons of the world to share their story. And so this is an opportunity, pastors, to think through, how have I addressed this from the pulpit? And it's a matter of discipleship. If Roland Warren was on with me, he's the president and CEO of CareNet, he would say that this is secondarily a political issue. It is primarily a discipleship issue. It's a spiritual issue. 70% of abortions in America take place in the lives of women who profess to be Christians. So we need to close the discipleship gap. That starts in the local church with people brave and courageous like Allison. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. In today's rapidly changing culture, Christians need solid biblical guidance more than ever. That's our mission here at Equip, to provide biblical wisdom for life's toughest questions. When you step in as an equipper, you're not just giving. Your monthly support helps to offer clarity and hope to a confused and anxious culture. And you'll get exclusive resources and updates from us all year long. Join our team of monthly supporters today. Call 888-644-4144 or visit equipradio.org. Welcome back to Equip with Chris Brooks. This has been a very important, very helpful, enlightening conversation on how we as Christians should respond to the advancements of abortion in our country and in our culture. One option that should be off the table is simply to be silent. It is simply not an option. The Bible tells us to cry aloud for those who cannot cry aloud for themselves. So I want to spend this last segment talking to you about how do we respond to objections, common objections that arise. One common objection that will arise is, again, as I stated earlier, is that these types of laws need to be in place in order to protect the mom. And this is where I refer to AppLog. This is where I refer to those who are in the medical field that tell me that every state of the book already has protections for situations in which the mother's life is at risk. That's a straw man argument, that there is no state in the union that does not afford for the situations that are rare in which a mother's health and life is at risk. This is a move beyond that. This is a move of convenience. This is to say we should not have to give any reason or rationale or measure up to any threshold in our reasoning or in our justification for an abortion, that we should be able to take the life of a child at any stage without recourse. And so let's be clear that it's a straw man argument to say this is to protect moms. The language that was, this whole bill was about removing language that required that threshold to say we no longer want that on the books. So this is the opposite of that. The second argument that often comes up is government needs to stay out of what happens between a woman and her doctor. And I would say that there's an aspect of that that we should all agree with. Certainly a woman or a man and their physician should have a pretty significant level of privacy. However, what we have to recognize is when we're dealing with pregnancy, we're not just dealing with one patient and their doctor. We're dealing with another life as well. Our legal system recognizes that. It's two lives that are involved here. That's why if someone was to, God forbid, take the life of a pregnant woman, and it caused the termination of the child, they would be on trial for double murder. They would be held accountable for not only the life of the mother, but the life of the child. It is clear by legal standards, as well as scientific standards, that this is an entirely separate life that's being terminated. So in those matters, to be consistent, the government has always had to step in when vulnerable lives that could not speak up for themselves were being threatened. Let's take, for example, if this same thing was happening with special needs children in our community, that we got news that there was someone who was on a rampage going from home to home, killing unsuspecting special needs children. What would you expect the government to do? To simply be quiet or to stand up and say, hey, this cannot happen in our state, in our community? There are certain times when the government is duty bound to step in. As an African American, I'm grateful for the civil rights movement, where the government stepped in and said, hey, it's not okay to lynch people. It's not okay to own people as property back in slavery time. So this is another moment of conscience where we have to acknowledge that governments can't be quiet. So it's a straw man argument to say that governments are somehow being intrusive unnecessarily. No, they're stepping in because there is a child that's involved that cannot have voice for himself. Unborn children can't lobby. Somebody has to speak up for them on their behalf. And then the final straw man argument we have to respond to is you guys don't care about anybody but the baby, and it's only about elections and power and politics. And I will say, sadly, that's been the case for some people, but it should not be. And the fact of the matter is the vast majority of pro-life Christians care deeply enough to start pregnancy resource agencies, care deeply enough to adopt. The leading group of families who adopt those children who are waiting for forever families are Christians, always has been. To be foster homes, the leading group for that has been Christians. And so our generosity is historic and proven, from starting hospitals to universities to caring for the hurting and the weak and under-resourced communities. It has been our DNA. So let it continue to be our DNA. But if we do anything proactively, it should be evangelization. This is a call for us to not just be political, but to be driven by the Great Commission, to lead with a spiritual solution. So let me end with this. Jesus is Lord. He forgives us of all sins, even abortion. And if you have not repented of your sin, turn to Christ. Do so today. Call upon him. And if you'd like to talk to somebody, dial this number, 888-NEED-HIM. That's 888-NEED-HIM. And until we're together again next time, as always, remember, Equipped with Chris Brooks is a production of Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Bible Institute.